on this bright spring morning in North Devon at this difficult time for our nation. Please do come and join me on my walk through this beautiful woodland, looking at the sights, hearing some of the sounds hopefully, and picking up some of the atmosphere that is all around. As many farmers in our land and farm workers have a great appreciation and love for the natural environment around them, I find such pleasure in being able to see the signs of spring and the sounds with the blackbird going overhead there. And I hope that as I share some of my passion for the natural world, you'll feel encouraged at this time as you just take some time out for like 15 minutes just to be able to enjoy this beautiful woodland with me. We are into the second week of April, and here we have the display of ramsons, or sometimes called wild garlic, laid out before us along the paths all around. The leaves can be crushed to form a lovely garlic addition to foods. As we can see here in the background some examples of bluebells. These are Spanish bluebells, but not the English ones. It's quite large, but there is quite a lot of interbreeding of the two groups. You can see some of the very early flowering trees here. The sycamore is one of those early ones excuse me, to come into leaf, and undoubtedly we will see some of these later as well. This is a horse chestnut, a lovely sapling that has survived, grown from a conker, of course, probably only 2 or 3 years old, that one. And here in the understory we can also see a small alder, which gives a characteristic beautiful white blossom. In a few weeks' time you can make elderflower cordial. And here's an example of how competitive the sycamore is. These are all sycamore saplings here. They certainly do know how to seed themselves and to flourish. A tree obviously has come down here, probably that one there actually, many years ago, and given rise to these very competitive seeds to be able to grow and fill this gap before us. This lovely little hawthorn sapling here is thriving, even though under the great shadow of this sycamore. Sycamore is usually a tree which will have one main trunk, and here is like an example of where probably 20-30 years ago one was cut down, and either on purpose or inadvertently coppiced, where you get various shoots coming off the one stump, which is down there. And usually with certain varieties of deciduous trees, certain of these then will be taken as handles and for various implements, and then one will be left as a standard. Sycamore is a very good strong hardwood, often was used actually in Viking boats. That's why they prevail very often, and are found after many hundreds of years to be in place. They have very enduring qualities. See, this is a well trodden track. Plenty of ring doves or wood pigeons, who obviously have enjoyed in the winter the lovely black berries that come from the abundant ivy all around us. There's a bit of a more mature hawthorn tree there just before us. A young beech sapling, a very invasive species not native to this country, so often actively removed because of its dominance of the canopy. A common addition to a British woodland is this holm or evergreen oak, and it's another larger version just behind this sycamore here. And the evergreen holly tree, which only a matter of months ago had beautiful red berries on a number of these lovely bushes, which are able to persist under a thick canopy. Here in the canopy we can see one of the common conifers in this this little woodland. A number of larch which go against the normal characteristics of conifers, in being that they are evergreen. This particular conifer loses its needles and then regrows in the spring. Beautiful stand of straight larches here then before us. Obviously some of the ones that have grown, probably this is 20-30 year old larch here, not that deep rooted, not able to get down, to go down with the roots deep, so this one has been blown over quite recently in the wind. The forest floor can reveal much, and when it was muddier here you could see where animals were passing by, foxes, badgers, squirrels, the like. And looking down here, you might come across, you can see the larch fir cones, but also in places you can notice parts of the Douglas fir. And looking up then, you can see here these are the Douglas fir tree rather than a larch, which is a proper evergreen. On the outskirts of the woodland area, the sun is able to penetrate obviously much better, and we get the growth here of what will be very beautiful red campions soon. We might come across some that are in flower in a moment. Of course then a lot more of the flowering of the ramsons, which haven't yet come into full flower in the main part of the woodland. And here we have some beautiful red campions, and with a backdrop of a young beech sapling. Undoubtedly many decades ago, probably 40, 50, maybe 100 years ago, this woodland would have been planted out commercially, but then also a lot of natural regeneration of the actual planted trees, obviously germinating their seeds in and around the area, being carried in the feces of birds and mammals to different parts of the woodland. Just so very, very peaceful just standing here. The small songbirds collecting insects and larvae from the emerging buds. The extra heat causing these to suddenly explode in population, and then of course being used for food for themselves, and in particular being taken back to their broods in some hidden place in the woodland or on the outskirts. So lots of species of tits, great tits, blue tits, chaffinches, blackbirds. Here we have one of the lovely understory trees. This is an emerging hazelnut. Of course the leaves will be 3 or 4 times this size as the weeks go by, giving the characteristic nut much sought after by mice and squirrels, at times humans if they're big enough. Going off the beaten track, of course, too often is not good for lots of people doing that. I understand that, but I'm just doing this to be able to share with others the beauty of the surroundings, and we can hear the crunchiness of the branches and the leaves. Up in the canopy on the outskirts of the woodland, we can see the characteristic shape of a Scots pine tree. It's a beautiful, fine example of such a tree, and another one here. Seems we've got a little cluster of them. Very distinctively absent from the canopy is that of the leaves of the oak trees in general, although here we can see the emerging green leaves of some, but of course the canopy would be so much thicker in the weeks to come, blocking out a lot of light underneath. We have here a laurel type of evergreen. We have these a lot along with rhododendrons in the woodland here, which are quite an invasive species and not necessarily good for woodland ecology generally. There we have some of the emerging oak leaves, just little mini versions of themselves, what they're going to be. Some remaining ivy berries, much sought after usually by birds in the winter time. Obviously so many here that there was no problem, and there's some left over, which is lovely. Seeing the flowering structures, the pollen laden structures before me here on the floor tells me there's a willow tree here somewhere, so looks like it's there in the background, developing willow tree, probably a crack willow tree. It's interesting to note that a lot of these woodlands would have been, yes, planted sometimes for conservation purposes, but also allowed to grow and to develop because they were on land that had very poor soil structure, and so would support very little apart from woodland, which of course is to our great joy and benefit in the decades and generations that have come after. We'll be seeing a very old oak tree, probably maybe 300-400 years old in a moment, which obviously is naturally something very challenging for youngsters to want to climb. So we'll just be looking at that in a moment. Here we have a very tall silver birch going up there, one of the early colonisers of ground. Not that long lived, often only 30-40 years before they just fall. With these foreign bushes, there'd be the laurels or the rhododendrons, one could be briefly mistaken for thinking you're going through some tropical area. Like I said, these are sometimes having to be very strongly destroyed because they are so invasive, even if nice in an English garden at times. Another foreign invader, bamboo looks like. Sometimes this does not thrive at all very well, and other times it does extremely well. But on this far bank it seems to be found the right soil mixture. On the outskirts of the woodland here we can see a closer up of a willow tree, with those little catkin things that were on the ground earlier. And here we can see, probably you can see there in the background, a cedar. Looks like a cedar of Lebanon, possibly, I think that tree is. And clearly some more conifers here, some Douglas fir and spruce. And here the very common bramble, which will be exploding soon with its beautiful white and pink varieties of blossom, which will lead hopefully to lots of lovely blackberries. Of course, a really good habitat and source of food, as is the stinging nettles we see around us, and the other herbs and flowers, very important for our insect life. Bees and flies. Nice to see some of the bluebells, even if they are mostly Spanish. There's a leyland cypress in front of us, often used in hedges. Don't usually see them form into full trees. And some emerging oak leaves. Wow, that is very beautiful. And at the top there, near the sun, the radiation, they're coming on even further. Something we refer to as butterbur here. And some lovely persistent primroses, wild primroses. It looks like an apple tree is flowering, probably a crab apple. We go into a little bit of a meadow area. And yes, that oak tree in the background is clearly soaking up the radiation, because that one there is coming into leaf, as we can see. And there's another apple tree. And a little tit, member of the tit family at the top there, singing its heart out and collecting the all-important insects for itself and for its young. A slight variation on the pink bluebells. In the background there, yes, when you see more than two black large birds, it usually means it's rooks. And there we have a rookery that would have been started in February, and there they'll have lots of young there. I think there we have a yew tree, I was going to say, but it's like a hedge, isn't it, in front of us. It's always lovely to have this mixture of meadowland where animals can come and feed, be they rabbits or deer, where humans can come and enjoy the sunlight. In the background there, it looks to me as if it's lots of cherry trees are coming into blossom. Generally the apple trees are not quite out in their full glory yet. Anyhow, I do hope you've enjoyed this walk. It's gone along a bit longer than I'd anticipated. But this here is sat within a town. In the background, to get the context, there is an industrial site. And I can see there also, just a little bit between us and the factory, looks like a beautiful magnolia tree. This clearly was a very well used and maybe even planned place for people to enjoy themselves. So as I come to the last few seconds of the 20 minutes, I hope you've enjoyed this walk, and that you will perhaps come and join me again as we hit the latter part of spring and summer with all its various beauty and colours to behold. Take care.